All right, so I will be teaching you guys how I would teach a 5-day unit on Canada. I'm going to pass around this unit outline. Please feel free to take notes on it if you find anything you like throughout my presentation. Please take one of those and pass it on. Thank you. So here's day one. Please listen.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land. True patriot love in all that stars command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true love strong and free. From far and wide, oh Canada, we stand on God for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Welcome to Canada. Now, if I were to bring this unit up for children, I would really want to start off with this book called Pictures from Our Vacation. It is a fiction book, but the main character girl is recalling her experience on a vacation to Canada. The funny part is she was given a camera to take all these pictures, and at the end she had so much fun that she forgot to take pictures, but the moral of the story is it's the memories that you make in your head that are more important than the pictures that you end up taking home. So I would read the story so they can keep in mind that it's about the experience, it's not about having proof. And with that in mind, they can learn this Canada unit and hopefully take home some really great things that they've learned. When I would begin the unit, I would really want to talk about how Canada is similar to the United States because these are third graders. They're going to know a lot about the United States by now. And I want to take that knowledge that they know about the US and bring it into Canada. So I would describe things that are similar, such as being in the Northern Hemisphere, part of North America, a country of its own, valuing freedom, having their own national anthem and their own national flag. So those are things that are similar between the two. But of course, there are things that make Canada very different from the United States, and that's, instead of having states like the United States, they have provinces and territories. Instead of being a democracy like we are, they are a monarchy. And one of the things that we'll touch base on in the following days to come is how America, we have police officers, but they have the mounted police. I would let them take a closer look. I'll just go through these with you. But we have here how they're both in the Northern Hemisphere, part of North America. They're each their own country. They both have freedom and rights, and as you can see in this picture, there's the picture of the United States Bill of Rights and the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Here's the flags side by side and the national anthem side by side. When we look at the differences, this is where I would teach them more about, here's the United States layout with the states and Canada's layout with the provinces and territories. There is Canada's Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, who is Canada's version of President Obama. And then here's the difference with the police versus the mounted police, and that's the United States police officers and the Canadian mounted police. Another book, and I don't have it here to share, is M is for Maple. It takes you through the alphabet, and each letter of the alphabet represents something about Canada. And I wish I could have brought it in here for you today so you can see, but it really starts bringing the culture of Canada in for them. Thank you. And now you guys get to have a little taste of Canada by yourself. So today we have maple donuts. And there's coffee up here too if you'd like to have coffee to go along with the donuts. So I'm just going to hand the box here to Isabel and let her take one and pass it down. If you need a napkin or to come up to grab some coffee, please feel free to just come right up. You could click. All right, and then my first activity is I have Maple Leaf Tic-Tac-Toe. So Maple Leaf, you'll notice, is a theme across Canada. It's even on their penny. The maple leaf is very important. And for you guys, with a partner, you guys can test this out for yourself. So this is the Maple Leaf Tic-Tac-Toe. It's the same rules as normal tic-tac-toe, but you're playing it in a leaf. So I'll let you guys just hold on to this for now. You can participate in these activities afterwards. And we can take us on to day 2.
Nova Scotia, PI, New Brunswick, Newfoundland and Labrador, Quebec, Ontario, Manitoba, and there are more: BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Northwest Territories, Nunavut, Yukon, Nova Scotia, PI, New Brunswick, Newfoundland and Labrador, Quebec, Ontario, Manitoba, and there are more: BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Northwest Territories, Nunavut, Yukon, 10 provinces, 3 territories, Eastern Maritimes, Western Prairies, provinces, 10 territories, 3. Start all over with Nova Scotia and PI, New Brunswick and Newfoundland and Labrador, Quebec, Ontario, Manitoba, and there are more: BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Northwest Territories, Nunavut, Yukon.
All right, so today we will be learning about the history of Canada. Now, part of the history is the development of the provinces and territories. So this song is a great way to help children memorize them. If you play that to them repeatedly, it's a very catchy tune and easy to memorize. So they would learn that there are 10 provinces, you probably heard that in the lyrics, and 3 territories. And the way that they read it across, it's, like I said, it's easy to memorize them. And Canadians think it's funny that they can list all of the 50 states of America, and when we need to list the Canadian provinces or territories, first of all, we don't even know that they're called provinces and territories, and second of all, we're calling them, I don't know, Moose County, Leaf County. We have no idea what we're talking about. So it's so important to have children understand that they are provinces and territories and that they are different from states. All right, so when we take us way back into the history, we start off with the Native people, with the First Nations people, and that's the Inuits, and Inuit actually translates into the people, and the Cree, the Blackfoot, and the Okanagan peoples. And this book right here, this is called Native Tribes of North and Northwest Coast. This will give you a big insight into the actual culture of the Native Americans. So when I would want to teach students about the differences between these tribes, then they would understand them. And it actually leads on, because later in the week we will be talking about culture, folk tales, and a lot of it stems from Native American history. So it's important that they learn this on day 2 so they can make the connections as they progress through the unit. Some of the important things about Canada is the Dominion of Canada. That's where it united some of the original provinces. And then as time went on, more and more provinces were added onto there. And later on the interactive board, you can see the timeline of how that happened. Another important part is the Canadian flag. It's actually only been their flag since 1965, so it's not even that old, but it definitely symbolizes the country. And then the Constitution Act of 1982, which finally declared Canada as an independent country. And this is just another list of the provinces and territories. I listed the capitals. We don't need to go through all of them, but I thought I'd list the capitals since they're learning about the capitals that go with each state. In the United States, they can learn about the capitals that go along with Canada. I wouldn't make that like an assessment piece, testing them out later, but I would want them to know the different provinces and territories there are. And it's not too many. They just need to remember 10 for the provinces and 3 for the territories. I also listed the acronyms for them, so like Ontario, ON, so they would see how it would look if you were to mail something to these different countries. Plus, on some of the board pieces here, especially in here, I just listed them by their initials because they're so long to write the whole thing out. All right, so our next activity is to do a puzzle. You don't have to do it right now, but this is what I would have the children do to close it out. I have these little maps of Canada right here. I have one for each of you. And you can use this to look at it first, and then you're just gonna cut out along the lines. Obviously don't cut all the little islands out up here, but just cut it out as a whole piece, and then you guys can work on trying to put it back together, sort of like you could do with a United States map. So I'll let you take one of those and pass it down, and that could be something we do together at the end of class. And we're ready for day 3. Alright, so what you guys just watched was a time-lapse video of the Northern Lights in Arctic climate. So this is a whole section about the Arctic climate and the Northern Lights. No, they are not unique to Canada, but it is a big part of Canada. Canada takes up a large portion of the Arctic Circle, and the Arctic Circle is what most experiences the Northern Lights. Sometimes they can stretch as far down into into the United States of America, but for the most part, it stays around the Arctic Circle. And in this lesson, we're going to learn about that, and we're also going to learn more about the Arctic climate. So here's a picture of the Arctic climate, very snowy, very cold. Looks like not a lot can be going on there, but in fact, there is a lot that goes on there, and there has been a lot going on there for the last 20,000 years. So in the upper part of Canada, the climate is classified as Arctic, and here's like a little map that shows it's mostly part of Nunavut, but it goes into the Yukon and the Northwest Territories. You can even see some of Quebec's in there. So it does take up a large portion of the country. And in summer, the sun is in the northern hemisphere. They actually experience 24 hours of daylight. And then during like the winter solstice, the winter months, they actually are experiencing 24 hours of nighttime. So you could be eating lunch and it'll be pitch black. Or if it's the summer, you could be going to bed, it might be midnight and the sun's still beaming in through your windows. So I have a great book that we could talk about with the Arctic animals because they have learned to adapt to these summers and winters. And this is called The Arctic Spring by Sue Viner, and I'll let you guys look through this. I won't read it word for word, but I think it's very beautiful. The pictures are amazing. Let me open up the first page for you. So here it says, the polar bear is snug and warm, asleep in her den in the Arctic snow. Outside, a storm is raging. The wind howls and the snow swirls. There's a blizzard outside. But now, later, the polar bear wakes up. Now the long winter darkness is ending, so she climbs out of her den. And she prowls in the snow. She sees that the mass of ice is moving, drifting into the sea. So this is right in the spring when the sun starts to come back. As you can see, these pictures are beautiful. As you go through, you see other animals who are finally popping out now that the sun is out. They were hibernating or staying hidden during those freezing cold 24-hour darkness days. Here's the Arctic fox, the harp seal, and some birds. And he even talks about narwhals, which is cool. Kids are going to love that. Polar bear again. At the end of the story, what makes this a great book for teachers to use is it actually gives you real information about the animals used. So of course this is a fiction story, but there are nonfiction elements to it. This describes information about each of these animals. And then on this next page, it actually shows you where these animals are, and as you can see, Canada takes up most of that. So it gives you a little bit of information. So this is one, I'll pass it around in case you want to document the name of this book and the author on your outline notes. All right, so a little bit more about the Arctic climate. This is actually a picture from the Library of Congress, and you can see the Inuit hunters spearfish the salmon, and that's taken from the early 1900s. So even though the Arctic has extreme temperatures, it's very frigidly cold. There have been people living there for years and years and years. The Inuits in Canada are native to this area, and they actually still live there today. They like to pass on their traditions to their families, so fishing, hunting, gathering, these are all very important skills, and they like to continue that. They don't want to just go to the grocery store. They want to continue the traditional way of life. So they're a very traditional type of people. And something that I would do to gain some family involvement during this day, I think it would be great to bring parents into the room or do it after school and talk about the animals that are in this area, because with climate change that is happening, a lot of the polar ices are melting and it's changing the habitat for animals that live there. Certain ones are being run into extinction or are on the verge of extinction. So polar bears is one of those, and I think polar bears is definitely something that most people have heard of them. They can see them at the zoo if they go to certain zoos, and I think a lot of people just love bears. I mean, kids grow up, they get teddy bears, things like that. So I think using something such as a polar bear as a way to bring up the WWF and wanting to raise money and bringing families in and getting community participation in this unit lesson plan would be about the climate change and the Arctic animals that are on the verge of extinction. So now we can look into the northern lights. So the northern lights are really just a reaction that happens when solar bursts from the sun out in outer space, swipes across the earth, goes past our atmosphere and mixes with the oxygen and nitrogen in our atmosphere. That's what causes the little light show that we see. You can get a range of colors throughout the rainbow, but most commonly you're going to see green. And now this leads us to our closing activity of the day. You might have noticed this little miniature one I put here on my board, but we could do a Northern Lights project. What I really wanted to do was have leaves as the background. As you can see, there's tissue paper in the background on this one here, and we're gonna do tissue paper. I wanted to do leaves. I thought that would look really pretty, but my leaves got all crunchy and hard, so that won't work. I did bring tissue paper though, so we could do it the way that we see here. So what I'll pass around to you guys is a black piece of paper, white piece of paper, and the tissue paper. I have an abundance up here. So at the end of my presentation, if you would like to make one of these for yourself, feel free to. I did bring a hole puncher and string so you can hang it up on your door if you really find that you love it. So let me pass around those materials. Take one of each. Thanks. And then later you can come up. I have a bunch of tissue paper right here. All right, so we're ready for the next day. was the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and that's day 4's topic. So the Mounted Police are definitely a symbol of Canada. They are very unique to Canada. They all ride these same horses. They're these black horses that they're bred to just continuously be the horses used by these mounted police officers. Their outfits that they use resemble that of the British Army, and their training, they began as like a very small group, but because of the popularity of them and their recognition, they are now as far as having 28,000 members in the community that are mounted police officers. And what you saw in the beginning, if you watch the Vancouver Olympics, that's part of Canada, they did a big show like this. So the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, they actually do these shows. They go to the different provinces and territories and they hold shows like this to promote themselves. And I would basically just take the time to explain that to them and then let them build their own mounted horse. So they could be the police officer, basically, who just made it. You can't really ride it because it's really small. But we'll make it out of clothespins and a little thing of a horse. So basically, you would color in your horse with like a pencil or a black marker. You can give it eyeballs. I was going to bring in googly eyes for you guys. But you'll color it in and then cut it out along the lines and then use these as the legs. You just stick it to them because when the clothespins are in this direction, they look like 2 little legs. So for each partner, just take 1 page and you can take 2 clothespins each. Pass it around so you guys have the activities for that. And sorry I don't have a video for this. I wanted to put a video in, but it was super long. I would share it with the children. It's a picture that depicts the crow who brought daylight. Have you guys heard this story before? So it's an old Inuit tale, and when they tell it, they say thousands of years ago it was always dark in their territory. It was always dark. The sun never came out, even in the summer. And a crow would always appear and come talk to the people. And the crow would talk about how in the south there is daylight, it's beautiful, it's warm. And the people were always like, well, one day, can you bring the daylight with you? And the crow tried to explain, well, now I'm too old and weary, I can't do it. And they begged the crow, they said, please do this for us. So the crow decides to go on a final journey to do this. He travels south to southern Canada, where the daylight is present, but it's like a magical thing. There's a chief who can do magic in a different Indian tribe, and the crow has to morph himself into a speck of dust so he can hide out in the cottage, and then he floats into this little baby boy's ear. I know it sounds weird, but he floats into the ear and he tells the boy, ask your father, the chief, to let you play with the ball of light. And there was a ball of light in this little box. So the chief gives it to the boy, and the crow jumps back into his crow form out of the speck, takes the ball in his beak, and he flies all the way back into the Inuit territory and releases the ball and brings daylight. And then because the crow was so weary and this was his last journey, he said he can only have the daylight shine for 6 months out of the year. It can't be there always. And that was why the daylight is on for 6 months and then off for 6 months. The crow has to rejuvenate himself. So I thought it was a very special story, and I wish I could have played the video, but there was no short version. You guys would be sitting here for 10 minutes watching a cartoon about it. Okay, so most of the Canadian folktales, as you can tell, stem from Native American history and folktales that have been spread on through the generations. A lot of it comes from European countries too, especially France, because there's a lot of French traditions in Canada. And Canada is actually considered a bilingual country. Most people that live in Canada speak both English and French fluently. I have this little book here, which is a French folktale. It's called The Flying Canoe. The original version is for adults like us, but this has been retold into a child's version and tied to Christmas. So basically the story is about these hunters who are lost in the middle of the woods, and they're sad because it's Christmas Eve and there's no way they're going to find their way home. And the Christmas spirit comes down and he tells them that if they can promise to not talk to each other for the whole ride home, that he gives them a magical canoe that they can travel back to their families. So secretly though, the Christmas spirit is a bad spirit. He's not really the Christmas spirit. He's trying to trick them so they have to be lost forever. So he tries to make them talk along their journey. Later on in the journey, they make it to their home, and one person has to speak up because they saw that his daughter was talking to this man that he did not approve of. So he starts shouting, "I told you to stay away from my daughter." And then the Christmas spirit, which is really a bad spirit in disguise, says, "Oh, you broke the promise, so now we're going back. You almost made it home, but now you're going to be lost forever." But the men were smart. They decided to jump out of the canoe, land on top of these roofs that were covered with snow, and just kind of plop to the ground. And it literally says at the end of the story, despite the bumps and bruises and broken bones, they were happy to be home with their families once more. So that's the flying canoe, and this is one that I'll pass around in case you want to write down the title. Like I said, make sure that you find a child's version of this story if you want to share it, because the original one's a little bit gruesome. You can probably tell from like the undertones to this story what the original story is like. And this is a very fun story, though. This is an adaptation of our Goldilocks and the Three Bears. This is called The Three Snow Bears. This is one that you definitely want to read with the children because you can not only use this to introduce more of the Inuit culture, but you can use this as a compare and contrast to the original telling of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. So in this story, we have the three bears that, "Ow," Baby Bear yells, "my breakfast burnt my mouth." And they say, "Well, let's go for a stroll and let the soup cool." And then who comes along? Aluki. So instead of Goldilocks, it's Aluki. So Aluki is a little Inuit girl, and she finds her way into the bear's home. And just like in the normal thing, she takes a sip from the big bowl. "Ow, it's too hot." She takes a sip from the medium-sized bowl. "Ugh, yuck, it's too cold." But she takes a sip from Baby Bear's, and it's just right, so she eats all of it. She finds her way into the living room. Ooh, I passed a little bit too far. Sorry, spoiler alert. She finds her way into the living room, and here she sees some boots, and she wants to put on the biggest boots first, but she says, "Oh, these boots are not comfortable at all." She puts on the middle boots. She says, "Oh, wait, these are way too fancy for me." And then she puts on the Baby Bear's boots, and she loves them so much, so she keeps those on and just leaves her shoes there. And when she finds her way into the bedroom, she realizes that she's tired at this point. So she first lays into the bed with most of the blankets, and she says, "Oh, this bed is too lumpy." So then she goes into the second bed, and she says, "Oh, this is too soft." And she goes into the Baby Bear's bed, and it's just right, of course. And the three bears return home, and you can see by this picture they're not too happy to know that people have been eating their soup, and Baby Bear realizes that all of his soup is gone. They come into their living room, and they're not very happy again when they realize somebody's been trying on their shoes, and then Baby Bear says, "Somebody replaced my nice shoes with these not-so-nice shoes." He literally says that. And then they come into the bedroom to find that Aluki is sleeping in their bed, and they're not too happy about that either. But what makes this really sweet is at the end, after she runs away, all the bears say bye, and they're waving at her. I thought it was kind of a cute way to end it. So again, this is very good for introducing more of the Inuit culture. The author, Jan Bratt, in the back, it actually describes that her inspiration for writing this was when her and her husband traveled to live in an Inuit hut, which is an igloo. She lived there for, I want to say it was 6 months to a year, and her time there really inspired her to write this story. So I'll pass it around in case you want to write down the name of the author. And you can move on. Okay, I already talked about the flying canoe, so I could pass that one. And some other parts of the folk tales, another common one is the Loup-Garou, and that's basically their way of saying werewolf. And you can find a couple horror stories. I won't read these ones to you. They're kind of long. But you can read different stories they have to share. A lot of Canada, the more southern part closer to the United States, is just filled with forests. And they do have a lot of wildlife there, including wolves, so it's no wonder why tales of werewolves eventually were formed. And those are just something that they like to tell, especially around the Halloween season, just like us, to try to scare each other about going into the woods. What makes their werewolves a little bit unique is that apparently if you just draw even a pinpoint of blood from a werewolf, that it will turn into its human form, and that's how you can get away from it. You don't have to kill it. So they were trying to tell people to be brave. If you're in the forest and a loup-garou approaches you, they said just to like poke him to draw blood, and he'll turn into his human form, and he'll be afraid of you, and he'll go run away. So that's the loup-garou. And so culture, Canada is one of the most diverse countries in the world. They accept people from everywhere, and they have a lot of benefits for people. Like I already said, it's a bilingual country, so most people speak both French and Canadian there. I believe Canada is also the second largest country in the world after Russia, after China. Maybe it's the third one. I don't know. I have to double check my facts there. But some things that are unique to Canada is they celebrate Canada Day, which I know a lot of you are a little bit familiar with because they talk about it here in the United States as well. You'll be able to find out more about Canada Day on my poster. But I also wanted to talk about how Canada has the largest trading market with the United States, and we have a free trade market contract with them, so we trade things for free between our countries. And I put down a lot of the food contains maple products, which you already know. I passed around the maple donuts, and it is true. They put like maple syrup on everything. Another thing that they have, and I put it here on my culture thing, I wish I listed up here, is their poutine. But that's basically like these French fries that they just cover in all this like gravy and potatoes, and it's just basically this big mess of deliciousness. Though that's something they like to eat too. So here's just a list of my references that I use to gather the information that I'll teach the kids with throughout this PowerPoint. Obviously, I would go into greater detail with the children. It wouldn't be such a snapshot. I want to make sure that they're understanding each part before I move on. But all the pieces that I pulled out of Canada for a third grade level, I feel is appropriate. They'll be able to understand it. I brought in things to help them learn. And then this interactive board that they would be able to come up to next will just make that knowledge even more concrete in their head. Right here, I'll just let you guys know what's over here, so when you get a chance to come over here, you can see. I have listed the folk tales. A lot of these I already talked about them with you, so you'll know what they mean. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask me, such as the first tier. I didn't get to tell that story to you. I'll give you a little insight to what that means. It's an old Native American tale again, and it just talks about the first time somebody cried. And they tell that story, how crying happened. And it's kind of a sweet and sad story. It's about this husband who his family was like starving, and he went out to go catch a seal to bring home dinner, and the seals kept getting away from him, and he was frustrated because he knew if he didn't bring anything home, his family would die. So when he takes like one last chance to try to get the seal and it goes away, that's how the first tier started. And it's sad because there's no happy ending. He doesn't get the meat to bring home to his family, but it is a nice tale about how the first tier started, because you know people ask those questions. Why do people cry? How did it start? Well, this is the Native American version of why crying began. There's a couple other ones listed up here. If you have questions, let me know. This little thing right here, you can spin it around and you can see different Arctic animals. I have a picture of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the flag, the Prime Minister. Here's our last activity I'm going to pass out to you guys. It's an acrostic poem. I just made up things that I learned across making this presentation, and that's Canada. I put culture, Arctic, Nunavut, animals, diversity, and auroras. So you guys can put anything out that you feel like you took out of the Canada lesson plan. I'll pass these around to go with your other activities. But your acrostic poem can be unique to you. Yours can like say a sentence. For all I care, it can be however you want it to be. I also added different things about the culture that I didn't discuss in the PowerPoint. Some of them are like the Royal Ballet. They do that in Canada. They have the Royal Ballet. They actually celebrate Thanksgiving as well, but their Thanksgiving is on the second Monday of October. So I did list those things that you guys can learn more about. I listed my provinces purposefully in the way that they were added as their own province into the country. So they're listed in order that way. Here I have the little brief history of Canada starting from 1497, when they have like actual proof of things happening. And it goes all the way to 1994, so that's pretty current. I should have added the 2010 Vancouver Olympics, but I didn't feel like that was something really necessary to add about Canadian history. I just added things I thought were necessary. Here's my example of the Northern Lights, so if you need some extra inspiration with your Northern Lights activity, you can take a look there. And for fun, down here, I just added famous people from Canada, because a lot of people don't realize that people that we idolize here in America We're actually born and raised in Canada. So a lot of this stuff is more so for us and for parents who might come in because they're going to get it, the kids won't. For example, she might be a little ironic, don't you think? We're all going to know that's Alanis Morissette because that's like her lyrics right there. I have the answer and the picture. So the children will know some of these actors as they go across, or actresses, or musicians. But like I said, this is mostly for like the humor of adults, and as you saw in my presentation, I plan to have a night where the parents come, so I wanted to have something there for them as well. And the rest of it's just, like I said, an overview of what we talked about in the PowerPoint, and then some. So add something extra. It gives kids something to think about and that they can research further on their own, or just ask me about. So that's my presentation of Canada. Please feel free to do the activities now, or eat more donuts.